Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Self-Published Success, a show that highlights forward-thinking authors who chose self-publishing over traditional, found success in doing so. My name is John Feldman, founder and CEO of Visionary Literary, and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Gary McDougall. Gary is a successful businessman, an author, a public speaker, and a published songwriter, co-writing the critically acclaimed song Love is Like a Sunny Day and the tune Understanding Man. He lives in Huntsville, Alabama with his wife and 2 children. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to see you again and to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, which is self-publishing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, so I am excited to have you here. We are excited. So just before we go into Gary's background and start getting into the show, Gary and I worked together a few years ago to put his book together and then to self-publish his book. Gary went the extra mile to create his own publishing company along with website, and everything has been great, and it's got him into public speaking and other things. So yeah, Gary and I have history working together, and really excited to dive into that. But Gary, let's start off by just giving the listeners a little bit of a background. I was very brief there in the intro about you and what you do in your writing, but give us a little bit of a background of you and your timeline up to wanting to write a book.
Okay, so first, I'm twice retired, actually, if you can believe that. I retired initially 20 years ago from I was in law enforcement, public safety, and retired from there, and got involved in security system engineering, which led to being the lead engineer for security systems for all of NASA nationwide, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm very proud of, because NASA is a very prestigious organization, and to attain that role that I did was very rewarding. It really brought my life full around from my meager beginnings, growing up in low income, poverty, and dealing with all the things that comes from growing up, on social services and all of the things that happens. But I'm happy to say that with hard work and preservation, I was able to essentially live the American dream. And so I think ultimately my purpose in writing the book was essentially, it's my memoir, it's my life story, but I wanted to write a book to inspire. I felt that my life, all the things that I've gone through, survivor's guilt and all the other things that happen in my life, I felt that by writing the book, I can inspire others who've gone, we all got a story to tell. I tell people all the time, we all have a story to tell. Not everybody gets to write it down in the book and get it on published, but we all got a story to tell. And it is my way of helping others who are going through the various things they go through, to let them know that in the end, no matter what you're going through, that you ultimately can come out the other side, that you can get through it and you can make something of your life, and you can reach and attain the American dream. So as far as writing is concerned, I started writing early in high school at the behest of or the suggestion of my high school English teacher, and started writing songs. I always loved writing songs. It was my dream to get involved in writing song lyrics, essentially. And I was able to get a couple of songs, as you mentioned, published, which I was very fortunate for. I'm very happy of. I didn't end up getting to be the quote unquote famous songwriter that I may have dreamed of, but friends and family have always reminded me, well, you were able to get a couple of songs published on the radio. Not everybody can say that, so that's something to be accomplished. As far as authorship and writing a book, after many years struggling with survivor's guilt, I decided once again, someone I met who said, hey, you should just share that with other people. Your story is not the typical everyday story that people have about their lives. People go through things, but in my life, I went through more than what most people do. And so I wrote the book, and I was very fortunate to connect with you to help me to ferret out. Fortunately, it was a nonfiction book. So as far as content and what to write, it wrote itself because it's
Yeah.
my life. I know my life, but expressing it and bringing it out in the waves that you helped me to do that, in allowing to have what everybody that has read the book will talk about, these chapter cliffhangers. My story is like a cliffhanger, and every chapter is like, oh, okay, what's going to happen next? Well, you got to go to the next chapter to go find that out. Next thing you know, you stayed up all night reading the book. And that has happened a lot. So that has been very rewarding for me.
Well, that's excellent. So for the listeners, yeah, Gary's book is called "Don't Tell Me There Ain't No God," which is available on Amazon, and I will put the link in the description. For anyone who has read it, the stories. For me, I was able to speak with you, Gary, and to get you to help again put like more structure into your stories. But your stories are absolutely incredible. Definitely page turners, regardless of if they're verbally told or written. So I would highly suggest that anyone listening give the book a read, because it is amazing, and it is all 100% true, which is even more amazing.
Absolutely.
So speaking of your book, right? You have all these stories, and you and I spoke, and you wanted to, like you said at the opening, you wanted to help. You wanted to share these stories to let other people know who might be struggling with survivor's guilt, like you, that you can kind of move forward and just you wanted to give some advice. The title of your book is one that you knew right away. The first time that we spoke, you knew the title of your book. For somebody who was to go a traditional publishing route, they might have a literary agent or a publisher interested in the book, but they might say, look, that title isn't going to work. We know what sells. We know what's in this genre. You need to name your book this. For you, again, as a self-published author, you had complete control over that. Why was that so important to you to have that title?
Well, it came to me really immediately before before I even thought about the book in the context of what the book would actually, in its actual content be, was that I knew what my life was, what I had gone through. And so in my mind, it was sort of, wow, I went through all these things in my life. I hadn't really thought about them until I collectively put them all together. And then I said, well, it came to me, don't tell me there ain't no God, because in my mind, all the things that I've gone through, all the times that stared death in the face and I was about to die,
Yeah.
I just, wow, I'm going to die. But then I didn't. And so, it happens once, maybe twice. Okay. But over about 9 times, you say, well, wow, there's got to be something greater than myself to have got me through all that, saved that. And so that's why I tongue in cheek, some people think it's tongue in cheek, but it's not. But don't tell me no God, that says, for me, my life and my experience of life tells me there is a God based on what has occurred in my life. Now, does that mean anything for other people? Not necessarily, in the sense, does that mean anything? It's really not a religious book. It's just a book of my life, and it so happens that God played a major role in it, and so therefore I'm just telling what has happened, and it's up to other people to believe that or not believe that. But I tell people, don't tell me no, there ain't no God, because my life says otherwise.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Going back to our calls too, I remember that. I remember so many, and like you said, nine times or however many times you did stare death right in the face, and you managed to escape. That title is not only something that's personal to you, but it's also very fitting for the story. So again, there's
Absolutely.
a lot of the self-publishing benefit. The number one self-publishing benefit, especially for nonfiction books like yours, is that creative control. You control everything from the title to the contents of the book to the structure of the book. So that's something, again, that for anyone listening, I harp on it in basically every episode. So you've already heard it, but creative control is very important. So Gary, as a self-published author, again, you went the extra mile, right? So self-publishing, Amazon especially, makes it so easy for you to write a book and just to publish it under your own name, and it comes up as for me, just for example, John Feldman, author, right? That would be the publisher. You went the extra mile. You created a company. And your company was your publishing imprint that you went under. Would you recommend to any listeners to go that extra mile? Was there a lot involved? And if so, was it worth it in the end to create your own imprint?
That's a good question. I think actually a person could go either way. Why I went to a publishing company, really, to be honest with you, because I was already a businessman. I already had companies. I already had an LLC. In my mind, I'm a businessman. So anything I do it from a business perspective because that's just my mindset. Does that mean that if you don't do that, that's going to be any less successful? Not really. But for me, I also wanted to eventually help other people perhaps and get other books. And I have a cousin, actually I have a cousin and a niece that have published books now that I've helped them with. And I put their book on my website, and I also wanted to give back. And I thought by having a publishing company, I can help other people self-publishing. I do have publishing resources on my website that are free for people to go and follow up on to help them. And it was just really the business part of it, wanting to be able to control every aspect of it, wanting to be able to have an ISBN so I could, because if you go just Amazon, really is no good way to get a book in the bookstore. You really need an ISBN, and some of this other printing production. Amazon is Amazon. They do Amazon. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. But if you want to get out there and get your book, because my book is out in bookstores, it is in the sense of you can get it through bookstores, and people have asked me that. But I will say this. The most important thing after all of the writing and all that stuff, and the most difficult part of publishing, whether you're Amazon or self-published, Amazon, or you're doing like I do, your own publishing company and all of that, promotion is the key. You could have the greatest book that's ever written. If people don't know about it, then no one's going to buy it because they don't know it exists. Yep. And that, I believe, is at the heart of ultimately, after you've written your book and did all the things that you're supposed to do, you got to promote it. And that's not as easy as some people would think.
Yes, that's a very good point. So there are the numbers every day. I look it up, and every day they change, anywhere from 750,000 books published per year to 1 million to 1.2. So again, if you build it, they will not come. You're basically throwing your book into a large pile. You have to promote it. But going back to, again, what you said, why you are a businessman. And from a business perspective, you knew that creating your own publishing imprint was the best for you. You had that experience. For you, it wasn't that much extra work to know that, you were in your comfort zone.
That's right.
And that's what a lot of, again, going back to the nonfiction thing, a lot of nonfiction writers that we work with, or that any business book, usually becomes that. It's like a publishing imprint that is part of one's company, kind of like you said. So again, not to sway any listeners into feeling like they have to start an LLC and they have to create their own imprint, but it is, if you have experience with it, there are, and of course, tax benefits and everything else that comes with
absolutely
with business.
That's a very important part that people need to understand too. Mm-hmm. The tax benefits of what you can do when you have your own company is when you're not.
Yes. So other than the tax benefits, what, from a self-publishing perspective, like what's, based on the few years that you've been a self-published author, what is one piece of advice other than promotion that we talked about that you could give to someone listening who is about to go down that self-publishing path? What's one piece of advice for success?
So that's a good question, and there's about maybe 3 or 4 pieces wrapped around that. And let me just say this, because this is one of the things that I ran into initially, and people that I've helped have run into this issue, and I've helped them to navigate through it. there are a plethora of what was the term I've heard people call it? Vanity press, I guess, is a lack of a better term that some people have. These companies that are going to come in and they're out there on the internet. I'm not going to get into any names. That's not really important. What is important to know that they exist, and they're for a fee or fees, or in some cases, pieces of your royalty. In some cases, we'll tell you we're going to do this, we're going to help you do this, and we're going to get your book published. And they're not really publishers in that context, but they're there to kind of walk you through all the things to get your book out there and get it in print and all of those things. And some of them could be exuberant costs and promise you a whole lot of things, including promotion and allegedly and all that. And I just would let people know the number one thing to do is be aware of that.
Yes.
Do your research. There's so much information out there in the digital world. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true, but you got to wade through it and you've got to look at it and be mindful of those things because they exist. I didn't fall into a trap in that sense, but I did get involved in some promotional stuff that weren't of any real significant value. So I learned that getting some promotional entity part of that is really it's not worth it in my opinion. So the big three thing I think from self-publishing, you've got one thing I tell people about the title, as you brought up. There are two things that people first know about your book before they know anything, and that's the title. So you want to think through the title very, very, very thoughtfully, especially if it's a fiction book.
Yes.
Because the competition is out there and people are going to be drawn to your book by the title. The second thing that I've advised people that I've worked with about is the cover. The cover is extremely important because if people see it on the bookshelf or even in Amazon, they're going to scroll through, they'll see the cover. And believe me, people are attracted to the cover. I have known of stories of people who've bought books just for the cover, so they could stick it on their bookshelf and show it up there because the cover was so great. They contact me and they didn't even really probably read the book. So the title is very important to think that through in the context of what it says to a person who sees that. Because the first thing I get asked as a writer, oh, you got a book. What's the name of it? I mean, that's before anything else. And so you tell them that, and people's interests are going to be piqued or not piqued based on that title.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the cover. Then, of course, the content is important.
Right.
But now getting into the more nitty gritty of self-publishing, whether it be as an imprint, your own publishing company, or through Amazon, is people need to be aware of. You need to, in your content, you need to have an editor. The idea of having a book and not having an editor is like no way. Yeah. I learned a long time ago from somebody I worked for many, many years ago who was a war correspondent, and they taught me, they said, never, ever edit your own work. You just can't do it because your mind is going to see what you think it is, what you believe it is, not what's on the paper.
Yes.
The other thing I would say is, if you can, get somebody to be a quote unquote a consultant who has experience in authorship and writing books and all this kind of stuff, like yourself, John, who could come in and help guide you as to how, some of the things of learning how to put the story together. I didn't have to worry about character development and plots and all that. My life was the character and the plot was my life. And so that was easy to some extent. But for fiction people, you really need, if you can, bring somebody in who has that experience and knowledge. John helped me so much in being able, this whole idea of the cliffhangers and the way that that we were able to get each chapter, the cliffhanger, is something that people talk about all the time when they talk about my book. And it was so great because it inspired people to want to go to the next chapter. So those are kind of things that that having a consultant or somebody to work with will help tremendously.
Yeah.
The other thing, let's see. Oh, there are resources out there. I have some on my website that you can go to that I use, that I'm comfortable with, that I think are legit, that will help you in all of the various areas that you need, from book cover design to the layout to editing to all of those things, to getting the formatting of the book right. So, because it can be a challenge to get Amazon to approve it and allow it to be uploaded. All of those things, those resources are there, and they will help you. Now, in closing, in this part, I would say, I would definitely say going through Amazon instead of your own publishing company is certainly easier. Yeah, there's no question about that. Amazon makes it pretty simple. I mean, it's not all that difficult to get a book up there. You know, once you get it written and you got the format correct that Amazon will accept. So that's a simpler way to go. If you want to go into a publishing company like I did, because maybe you want to work with others, maybe you want to help people, or you want to publish another book, maybe it's just a business thing, you already got a company, you want to bring that in on the LLC for tax purposes, then that. And as far as control, whether you go on Amazon or whether you have your own publishing company, you're still in control. You know, the only time you're not in control is when you have a publisher. And let me say something about publishers, because I did a lot of extensive research and went through that, chasing all that down. Let's be clear. If you go and get on Amazon, even if you're self-publishing, getting in the bookstore is very difficult to do. And this idea of getting in the bookstore and you're going to have a book signing in the bookstore, yeah, that's not going to go. It's not really going to happen in 99% of the cases. The one benefit of having a traditional publisher, as hard as it is to even get to that, is that they'll handle all the publishing, all of the promotion and all. You can then get books, you can do all stuff, but you're gonna give some rights away, and more importantly, that not only going to give financial rights away, but you're also going to give away your creative control, because publishers are in the business of making money. And they have formulas for commercialization in order to do that. And that's just the reality. So know that going in.
Yes. Yeah. So all good points there. Speaking of the getting into bookstores and the cover that you mentioned. So yes, for anyone self-publishing, so many people overlook the cover design and the title. As you scroll through Amazon looking for books or some of these promotional websites, the cover is key. If you are going to get your book into bookstores, which is possible, especially in your local bookstores, you also have to worry about the spine. So for anyone watching, if you look behind Gary, we see all the spines of the books. Those are very important too, because in order to if you do get into a bookstore, having your spine showing is 99% of books. That's how they are stacked in bookstores. To have your cover showing means that you have some special interest in the bookstore, and you need to be a traditionally published author, in the top 0.5% of those traditionally published authors to get there. But going back to that title and cover, so important. I mean, almost more important than the content of the book itself, because like you said, people will buy a book based on the cover.
One point I do want to make about the cover too that I didn't say, because I've ran into this on a number of occasions. Very important to understand, because I've run into it where people have wanted to put their photo on the cover.
Oh yeah.
And what I have said to them is not a good idea. The only time, and the reason that you can know that, just go to your local bookstore. Look through the books as I did. Look at the books in the genre that you're looking. Look at what those books are. The only time you're going to see the picture of somebody on a book is they're already famous and people are they're attracted to go, oh, that's whatever, Obama or whoever, whatever, that's actor so-and-so. And that's the draw. Yes. You put your photo on there, they don't know you from Adam. Yep. And it's not going to, I mean, you could be attractive and all, I'm not saying that, but who are you? I don't know you. But if you have something where the cover is attractive and it draws people to, that's a better deal than putting yourself on the cover.
Exactly. And the same goes so based on, like you said, everyone has to know you. So it has to benefit them to know you. The same thing happens with the title. So when you're writing your title, you also need to, the reader, everyone is selfish. The reader is going to say, how is this going to benefit me, especially for nonfiction books? So that title has to really stick out and grab them, and within an instant, let the potential reader know how the book is going to help them. So your website is kengarpublishing.com, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so for anyone listening, those resources that Gary mentioned, Kengar Publishing is where you can find those, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. Gary, what's next for you? What are your future plans?
Okay, so that's a good question. It's gone back and forth, but I think I've finalized. Well, I know I've finalized because I built my studio and did all this stuff. So I wanted to write a second book, and I started to put some of the things together. I even had a cover and some other things put together. And then I decided to actually, since the book was going to be, once again, nonfiction, it wasn't going to be a fiction book. It was sort of going to be filling in the gaps and filling in more of the story from the first book of my life, but being more focused on the spiritual aspects of the book, because that's kind of where I wanted to delve into. And as I looked at it, started to put together, some chapters or whatever, I decided that I wanted to turn it into a YouTube series instead.
Okay.
So I worked on putting together an outline for a YouTube series, initially starting, I think it's going to be like 13 episodes, or how many episodes I have pre-built as far as the outlines and what those titles of those episodes would be. Built a studio. I got sidetracked with life because things happen in life, but I've kind of got through that, and I'm about ready to start my YouTube series. So the idea is the YouTube series will be, each episode will be similar to the way it would be a chapter in the book, talking about whatever I was going to talk about in the book. And then the idea is at the end to then take all of that and put that into maybe some reoccurring YouTube things on my channel relevant to all that came out of the series, just maybe picking out other topics along the way relevant to all of that and presenting all of that. And I just decided to do that because one of the things that I found that for me, and this is for me, this is not for most people, is I wanted to share some of those experiences in a way that I didn't have to worry about, I'm going to buy a book. Well, it's free. It's YouTube.
Yeah.
There may be some monetization and all that that goes with it down the road, and that's fine. But the idea was still that I wanted to share my experiences and share what has occurred to me in my life and how that has changed my life and how it can change others who want to prescribe to the spiritual aspect of my life. And so that's what I decided to do. And that's what my next chapter is.
Excellent. Well, that's a very visionary approach to telling your story. I like that. And again, that can always be, if that does take off, you can always just take that contents and turn it into your other book that you've been writing.
Absolutely. So, I also wanted to do an audio book, but then I went back and forth, and I think the YouTube series, and I can still turn it into an audio book, even the first book, because I have so many people I've talked to says, oh yeah, I'd love to read your book. I just don't have the time. I like audio books because, when I'm in the car and I'm going to work, I can listen to it. And so I would say to people who are self-publishing, don't overlook that. It's some extra work, and there's some other nuances that you need to know and understand about it. But having an audio book as an option with your print and with your digital copy is a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. And there are plenty of resources online. And then if Upwork, Fiverr, places like that where freelancers are, you can find some cheap sound editing that makes your audiobook sound better. So
absolutely,
I wouldn't go cheap on the audio because you don't want people to listen to a crappy sounding audiobook. But yeah, Gary, this has been an excellent conversation. Again, congrats on all your success. Great to speak with you again and to catch up and to hear what your next projects are. Where can people find your work?
So, far as my book, as you said, it's on Amazon. It can be ordered through bookstores for those people who want to order for bookstores, but Amazon works just fine. And if you're a Prime, boom, free shipping, boom, they'll send it to you. If you want a signed copy of my book, on my website, kengarpublishing.com, there's an option there to buy it from my book site, and then I will sign it and I will send it to you. So that option is there. As far as any music that the songs that I have published, they are available on all of the musical platforms, Apple, the rest of them. Just go up there and search for. Now, the one caveat, if you're if you're looking for me as a songwriter, either searching on Google or Amazon or whatever, I wrote those songs in the pen name of Gary Swan at the time because I wanted some anonymity at the time, and I think it's people may laugh at this and think it's funny, but for me, yeah, I've said, well, if you become famous, Gary, then you can't walk down the street because people will recognize you and they go, oh, aren't you so and so? And I was a very private person, so I wanted to have a pen name so I can hide behind that. To be honest with you, that was the reason for it. So be aware of that. But those songs are available. The one little thing I will say that probably hasn't been put out there, the song "Love Is Like a Sunny Day" was the #2 song on independent European charts for a while, and was very successful. Still gets played around the world, and so I'm very, very pleased and happy with that. And my book still sells on Amazon here and there. And although I do probably give away more books than I should, when I meet someone and I'm inspired by, and I see where their lives are going, I give them a copy to help them, with overcoming whatever those challenges are at the moment that I've identified in interacting with them. So I do that.
Well, that's excellent. That's always a good thing to do, to give away books. It definitely helps with your credibility. So again, congrats on everything that you have been able to accomplish with this book, with your upcoming projects. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, to give us some advice, to walk us through your story. We again appreciate your time and wish you all the best of luck as you move forward with this new project of yours.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, John. It was my pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Take care.